The twin sons of Kepler 437b beat down mercilessly on the jagged, ochre plains. Dust swirled in lazy spirals, catching in the cracks of the parched land and forming ghostly clouds that shimmered in the heat. Captain Eli Morneau adjusted the collar of his exosuit, trying to ignore the burning sensation on his neck as he scanned the horizon with his team. The planet had been mapped for months by orbital probes, and nothing had suggested life beyond microscopic organisms. Yet now something moved, a ripple in the air that made even the automated sensors pause. It began as a shadow, elongated and shifting across the golden plains. At first, Eli thought it might be a trick of the light, but then it solidified. A figure emerged, towering and otherworldly, its limbs bending at angles no human skeleton could. Its body glimmered faintly, like burnished metal under sunlight, and its eyes, massive, multifaceted, and glowing violet, reflected intelligence, curiosity, and something darker. Eli froze. This was not a scouting drone, not a probe, not an animal. This was the alien queen, the apex of a species humanity had only ever theorized about. She moved slowly, deliberately, each step pressing into the sand with soft but undeniable force. The vibration through the ground told Eli she was massive, easily 3 times the height of a human, with a presence that seemed to bend the air around her. His instincts screamed at him to retreat, to activate their defensive measures, but the queen's approach was not aggressive. There was a strange elegance to her movement, a deliberate grace, as though she were performing a ritual older than any human civilization. Then the voice came, not through the communicator, not in sound, but directly into his mind. "Water," it said. The word was simple, but the impact was profound. It reverberated through Eli's thoughts, soft yet demanding, as if the concept of water was sacred to her. Her presence was overwhelming, yet there was a hint of desperation buried beneath the raw power. She wanted something, and she trusted that humans could provide it. Eli's hand went automatically to his canteen. He unfastened the lid with trembling fingers, feeling the cool metal against his palm. His team watched him warily, unsure whether to follow orders or flee. Lieutenant Saria whispered over the comms, "Captain, are you sure that's a good idea?" He could hear the fear in her voice, fear that mirrored his own. But something in the Queen's tone urged him to act, to trust the moment instead of fearing it. He stepped forward, holding the canteen out. "Here, take it," he said, voice steady though his heart hammered in his chest. The Queen extended one clawed limb, each segment moving independently, and touched the canteen with surprising gentleness. She tilted the vessel, her enormous eyes studying him for a brief, intense moment before taking a sip. The liquid glistened in the harsh sunlight as it passed into her alien mouth. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the Queen's body trembled. Violet eyes flared, light spilling across the landscape in a wave that bent the horizon. She spat a thick greenish fluid, sizzling as it hit the sand, narrowly missing Eli and splattering the edge of his exosuit. The team jumped back and Eli stumbled, his breath catching. The Queen's roar filled his mind, reverberating like a physical blow. "Water, yours, poisoned." Her words rang with rage and confusion, yet beneath them lingered a trace of doubt, as if she couldn't understand why he would willingly offer something meant to harm her. Eli stepped back, staring at the canteen in his hand. It was only water, distilled and clean, yet somehow it had triggered this fury. His mind raced. What had gone wrong? Was it a chemical reaction, or had she simply never encountered anything offered in trust before? The ground shook subtly under their feet, and more shapes appeared on the horizon. The Queen was not alone. From the distance, others of her kind emerged, slender, imposing, moving with coordination that suggested advanced intelligence. Their appendages shimmered faintly, each limb ending in delicate, almost ceremonial claws. They spread out, encircling Eli and his team. The heat and intensity of their presence was overwhelming, a physical force that made breathing difficult even in an exosuit. Eli realized they had stumbled into something far larger than a simple first contact. One sip, one small gesture of goodwill, had created a ripple that reached across this alien hierarchy. The Queen's anger was terrifying, but it was not blind. It was focused, precise, a controlled fury that suggested reasoning beyond instinct. He felt it like a weight pressing on his chest, demanding attention and respect. His team scrambled, unsure whether to prepare weapons or attempt retreat. The Queen's attention shifted away from him for a moment, and Eli noticed the flicker of something unfamiliar, hesitation, perhaps, or confusion. She was powerful, dangerous, and beyond comprehension, yet she had expected humans to act in a predictable way. Trust, she seemed to think, should be an instinct, not a strategy. "Captain, they're surrounding us. What do we do?" Lieutenant Seria's voice trembled over the comms. Eli could hear panic edging her words. He glanced around, noting the advanced formation the aliens had taken. It wasn't a random attack, it was a calculated display of dominance. The Queen wanted to assert control, but she also wanted understanding, and Eli realized that he was the conduit between these intentions and reality. Eli swallowed hard, forcing his fear into focus. "We survive," he said, "by showing them we're worth understanding." It wasn't bravado, it was strategy. They were outnumbered and outclassed physically, but they still had humanity's greatest weapon: ingenuity, empathy, and courage. The Queen turned her attention back to him, her enormous eyes narrowing. The greenish fluid on the sand hissed, releasing noxious fumes that stung the lungs. Eli moved backward cautiously, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. He remembered the first lesson of first contact. Aggression breeds aggression, but trust can change the tide. He extended his hands, showing them empty. "It's just water, clean," he said, though unsure if she could understand language. But perhaps she could sense intent, the honesty behind the words. The Queen tilted her head, observing him as if weighing the sincerity of his actions. A flicker of curiosity passed across her massive face. The team watched in tense silence as she shifted, turning her enormous body slightly away, almost contemplative. Eli's mind raced with questions. Were they aggressive by nature, or had the harsh conditions of Kepler 437b shaped their survival instincts? Could trust exist in such a species, or was it a concept humans imposed on everything unknown? The answers didn't matter now. Survival was immediate. Eli took a step forward, careful, deliberate. "We mean no harm," he projected as clearly as possible, reaching for the communicator to open a channel for non-verbal signals. His hand shook, but the weight of responsibility forced steadiness. They were not only representing themselves, but all of humanity. One misstep could ignite a conflict that no planet-bound force could contain. The Queen's posture relaxed slightly. The air around her shimmered less violently, though her eyes still glowed with intensity. Eli noted this as progress. Perhaps the act of offering water, even though it had been rejected in rage, had opened a thread of communication. She was testing him, testing them, gauging whether humans could act with integrity under pressure. Suddenly, one of the Queen's kind stepped forward from the circle of the newcomers. Its movements were precise, almost ceremonial, and it extended a luminous appendage. Eli watched carefully, realizing this was a form of communication, perhaps a ritual of assessment. He mirrored the gesture as best he could, raising his hand slowly, the canteen still in his other hand. The alien stopped, paused, and observed him for what felt like an eternity. Then in a subtle motion it pointed toward the horizon, toward the distant mountains that rose like jagged teeth in the heat. The Queen's eyes followed, and Eli understood. They wanted him to lead, to show initiative, to act rather than wait. It was terrifying. Every instinct screamed to retreat, to prepare weapons, to run, yet the moment demanded bravery. Eli realized that human courage was what distinguished them, not size, not strength, but the will to act morally under impossible circumstances. He nodded slowly. "We follow," he said. "We show them we can survive together." The Queen's roar shook the air again, but this time it was not purely rage. There was something else, expectation. Eli tightened his grip on the canteen, aware that the path forward was uncertain, dangerous, and potentially history-making. One sip, one act of trust, had brought them to this precipice. And now, humanity's fate rested on their ability to meet the unknown with courage, intelligence, and respect. Eli led his team cautiously across the uneven terrain, the twin suns baking the cracked ground beneath their boots. The Queen's massive figure followed at a distance, her violet eyes unblinking as she observed every move. The air was tense, thick with anticipation, as if the planet itself were holding its breath. The newcomers, the Queen's kind, spread in a loose formation, their shimmering limbs reflecting the harsh sunlight like living blades. Every step felt dangerous, yet Eli knew hesitation could be even more perilous. Lieutenant Seria whispered beside him, barely audible over the faint hum of their suits. "Captain, I don't think they're attacking us yet, but I don't like the way they're watching." Her voice carried a mix of fear and awe, and Eli felt the same. There was intelligence here beyond human comprehension, but it was not inherently malevolent. Yet, their behavior suggested curiosity, dominance, and something deeply alien in morality. Eli nodded, keeping his focus on the path ahead. "We show them we can act with reason," he said. "We don't fight, but we don't submit blindly either. Humans survive by thinking, by choosing carefully." His words were more to steady himself than to reassure Saria. He felt the weight of every human life present, the responsibility for every decision. This was no longer a survey mission. It was humanity's first true test against an intelligent alien species. As they moved, the Queen's towering form adjusted her pace. Her eyes flickered occasionally toward the others, communicating in ways Eli could not yet decipher. They were coordinating silently, their movements deliberate, almost ritualistic. One of the smaller aliens stepped forward and extended a luminous appendage toward Eli's team, a gesture that seemed part challenge, part invitation. Eli hesitated, then mirrored the gesture carefully, keeping his hand steady. The alien paused, tilted its head, and then retracted the appendage. The Queen's eyes narrowed, and for a moment Eli feared a renewed attack. But instead she made a low hum, a sound that vibrated through the ground and resonated in the team's suits. It was rhythmic, almost musical, yet carried authority. The humans instinctively stopped moving, letting the vibration wash over them. It was as if the Queen was asserting dominance but also testing patience and understanding. "Captain," Saria's voice trembled. "Are they communicating?" Eli nodded slowly. "I think so, but not with words. Watch their movements, their timing. They respond to behavior, to intention." It was unlike anything humanity had prepared for. All simulations, all theories had assumed aggression or passive observation, but this was something different. A social evaluation, conducted in real time with lethal precision. Every gesture, every step was being judged. The team reached the base of the jagged mountains. The terrain rose sharply, rocks cutting into the sky like teeth. Dust swirled around their boots as they climbed, the Queen following silently, her immense shadow casting a cooling relief on the scorching sand. Eli noticed the others of her kind had spread around them, forming a perimeter that was more strategic than threatening. It was containment, not imprisonment. The humans could move, but the aliens would observe every action. Suddenly, a distant tremor shook the ground. The Queen paused mid-step, her body rigid, sensing the movement long before Eli could. From the rocky ridges, a swarm of smaller creatures emerged, thin, fast, and covered in chitinous armor that reflected the suns like mirrors. They hissed and darted with precision, a hunting pack coordinated as if guided by a single mind. Eli's heart leaped. The Queen did not attack them, she waited, observing the humans' reaction. "Captain," Saria shouted, pointing. "They're like scouts or hunters." Eli squinted, calculating. They were fast, lethal, and intelligent, but not invincible. With proper strategy, the humans could survive the encounter, but only if they acted without panic. Eli knelt, signaling the team to halt. Slow movements. "Don't provoke, show awareness but not fear. Humans survive with brains, not brute strength." He pulled a small sensor from his belt and activated it. A faint energy pulse emitted, creating a temporary barrier that shimmered in the sunlight. The swarm slowed, confused, and Eli realized they had triggered the Queen's silent approval. Her hum vibrated stronger, resonating through the ground. The aliens stepped back, granting a temporary reprieve. As the humans pressed forward, the Queen's presence shifted slightly, a subtle change in posture that Eli interpreted as permission to continue. The terrain became steeper, the rocks jagged and unforgiving. Dust and debris made footing treacherous, but the team moved carefully. Eli noticed that the Queen's eyes followed every movement of their hands, legs, and even the canteen strapped to his suit. It was as if she were cataloging their species, learning, calculating, judging potential threats and potential allies simultaneously. Hours passed. The suns began their slow descent, casting long shadows across the rocky slopes. Despite the harsh environment, the humans began to understand the rhythm of the Queen's presence. She did not attack impulsively. She observed, assessed, and responded only to deliberate action. Her kind mirrored her behavior, though smaller ones tested limits occasionally, darting close and retreating in synchronization. The humans learned quickly. Panic would provoke aggression, calm and reasoning would earn cautious respect. Eli stopped on a plateau, panting, his exosuit sensors showing rising stress levels. The queen paused as well, her form massive and imposing in the low light. She lowered her body slightly, bringing her multifaceted eyes closer to human height. The team froze, unsure if this was threat or observation. Eli swallowed hard, extending the canteen again, not as a gift, but as a symbol of continuity, of trust maintained even after the initial rejection. The queen's violet eyes flickered. She sniffed the air, or perhaps sensed the humans' intent through some alien perception, and then made a sudden motion. She reached out, not with claws, but with a fluid, sweeping gesture pointing to a narrow crevice in the rock face. Eli hesitated. Was it an instruction, a warning, or a trap? He glanced at Saria, who shrugged subtly. They had learned that hesitation could be as dangerous as aggression. Eli nodded and led the team toward the crevice. Inside, the narrow passage opened into a sheltered canyon. The walls glowed faintly with bioluminescent minerals, casting a soft light that reflected in the queen's eyes. The humans stepped carefully, aware that they were being tested. The queen followed, her massive form curling to fit within the canyon. The others maintained perimeter, their luminous appendages scanning the humans at every angle. Inside, the air was cooler and still. For the first time, the humans felt less like prey and more like participants in a delicate exchange. Eli knelt and set the canteen on the ground. It was an offering, yes, but also a signal. Humanity did not approach blindly. They observed, adapted, and respected boundaries. The queen extended a limb, hovering it near the canteen. She touched it lightly, then drew back. Eli's heart raced. The motion was slow, deliberate, and careful, acknowledgement, not attack. The other aliens mirrored her behavior, moving closer to examine without harming. Eli realized that this was more than survival. This was communication, the first fragile bridge between species. As the humans rested briefly, scanning the canyon for dangers, Eli noticed something astonishing. The queen's eyes softened just slightly, as though curiosity was beginning to outweigh suspicion. Her hum changed, lower and resonant, vibrating not with dominance but with attention. She was learning from them, processing behavior, intent, and moral choice. Humanity's ability to think, to act with integrity under danger, was being recognized, even by a species that could crush them without effort. Hours passed, and the team began to map the area, taking samples and recording observations. The queen allowed it, maintaining a presence nearby but no longer aggressive. The other aliens began to mimic human motions subtly, tilting heads, observing gestures, even stepping in synchronization with the team's movements. It was a form of mimicry, an acknowledgement, and perhaps a primitive form of communication. Eli felt a surge of hope. Humanity had stumbled into an incredibly hostile and alien ecosystem. Yet their instincts, courage, and intelligence were creating an opportunity for understanding. One sip of water, one act of trust had been rejected violently, but it had opened a path, a difficult, treacherous, and uncertain path, but one nonetheless. Then, just as the suns dipped below the horizon, casting long, purple shadows across the canyon, the ground trembled again. From the far end of the plateau, massive shapes began to move, larger than the queen herself. Their silhouettes were immense, and the air around them shimmered with an energy that the humans' instruments could barely detect. The queen stiffened immediately, and the other aliens tightened their formation. Eli's heart sank. Whatever was approaching was not part of her immediate group. These were unknown entities, massive, dangerous, and potentially far more aggressive. The humans were outnumbered, but retreat was impossible. They were in the queen's territory now. Eli turned to his team, determination hardening his features. Stay calm, observe, respond only when necessary. Humans survive because we act wisely, not because we fight blindly. His words steadied them, and together they faced the shadows approaching, ready to test the fragile trust they had begun to build. In that moment, Eli realized something profound. Human courage was not just physical bravery, it was moral bravery. It was the willingness to act with trust and intelligence in a universe that was vast, alien, and often indifferent. And for the first time, he felt that this queen, terrifying as she was, might recognize that bravery. The massive shadows drew closer, and the canyon echoed with the queen's low hum, a sound that had shifted from dominance to vigilance. Humanity's first true contact was far from over. and the challenge ahead was greater than any battlefield they had known. But for the first time, Eli understood. Humans had a way to survive, even thrive, in the presence of beings far beyond their comprehension. The night on Kepler 437b was harsh, though the twin suns had dipped below the horizon. Shadows stretched across the jagged canyon walls, and the faint bioluminescent glow from the mineral veins gave everything an eerie, alien shimmer. Captain Eli Morneau crouched behind a jagged rock, scanning the horizon. The massive shapes that had appeared on the plateau earlier were now clearly visible, hulking forms moving with a rhythm that suggested intelligence, not random wandering. The Queen's group had gathered close to them, forming a protective barrier, her eyes glowing dimly in the low light. Eli felt the weight of the moment pressing on his shoulders. They were humans, fragile and small, in a world dominated by beings far larger and far more powerful. Yet the Queen had not attacked. She had tested, observed, and allowed them a fragile foothold. Now a greater challenge had arrived, and humanity's resilience would be tested in ways he had never imagined. Lieutenant Saria whispered beside him, her voice tense. "Captain, are we even ready for this? These things, they're huge and fast. I don't think our suits can handle a direct hit." Eli shook his head, forcing calm into his voice. "We survive because we act wisely, not by hiding, not by running, but by thinking. Humanity has faced impossible odds before, and we're still here. Focus on the task, Saria. Every choice matters." He could feel the hum of the Queen vibrating through the ground, a constant reminder of the balance they were treading. The hulking forms were now closer. Their bodies shimmered slightly, like living metal under the faint bioluminescence. They did not move like animals. There was coordination, a sense of hierarchy. Eli realized these were no random predators. They were organized, possibly leaders or warriors from a rival group of the same alien species, or perhaps something entirely different. Their sheer size suggested immense strength, and their movement suggested intelligence capable of strategy. Eli signaled to his team to maintain formation. They had learned the basics of interaction with the Queen's kind: slow, deliberate movements, non-threatening gestures, and calm communication. Any sudden motion could provoke aggression, and any hesitation could signal weakness. Survival here would require every ounce of human ingenuity and courage. Suddenly, the lead massive figure paused and emitted a low, resonant vibration, like the Queen's hum but harsher, more threatening. The canyon walls shivered under the frequency, and Eli felt it in his chest. It was a warning, unmistakable in tone and intensity. The Queen's form stiffened immediately, moving to place herself between the humans and the approaching threat. The smaller aliens mirrored her movements, creating a living barricade. Eli swallowed hard. "It's a challenge," he whispered. "They're testing the Queen, and we're caught in the middle. Stay calm, stay alert, and stay human." His words reminded him of what humanity had always excelled at: strategy, adaptability, and courage under impossible circumstances. The massive creatures advanced, their limbs striking the ground with precise force. Dust and debris kicked up, creating a veil that made it difficult to see. Eli's team raised their sensors and shields, scanning for weaknesses, opportunities, anything that could give them an edge. The Queen's eyes, glowing violet, never left the humans. It was as if she were silently commanding them, telling them to observe, understand, and act with reason. As the creatures drew closer, one of them emitted a piercing, high-pitched screech. The sound vibrated in the air and through the canyon walls. Eli realized it was a coordinated signal, likely directing the others. Yet the Queen did not respond with aggression. Instead, she shifted slightly, her movements precise, almost ritualistic, as if acknowledging the challenge without escalating it. Eli understood this as a lesson. The Queen was showing them that power alone was not enough. Control, patience, and strategy mattered more. Humanity's advantage was not in size or brute force, but in adaptability and reasoned choice. He whispered instructions to his team. "We observe, we move strategically, we do not provoke. Any sign of aggression, we respond with defense, not panic." The first contact occurred unexpectedly. One of the massive creatures lunged, not at the humans, but at one of the smaller aliens. The Queen's group responded instantly, moving as a cohesive unit, their limbs and bodies coordinating flawlessly. The humans watched, frozen but learning. Each move the Queen made was a lesson in strategy and control. Humanity had faced conflict before, but never on this scale, never against beings whose strength far exceeded theirs. Eli realized that understanding the Queen's species meant understanding behavior patterns, hierarchy, and response mechanisms. This was not just survival, it was a study in intelligence and adaptability. The humans began to mirror subtle gestures, moving in synchronization with the Queen's group, showing awareness, attentiveness, and respect. The massive creatures paused, seemingly assessing these new behaviors. Hours passed in tense observation. The humans learned to anticipate movements, to predict reactions, and to communicate without words. The Queen's influence was undeniable. Her presence guided them, teaching the subtle art of interacting with a species that could annihilate them with ease. Eli felt pride not in strength, but in humanity's capacity to learn, adapt, and survive. As the night deepened, the terrain shifted. Narrow ravines opened between the jagged rocks, creating natural choke points. The Queen guided the humans toward one of these passages, using subtle gestures. The massive creatures followed at a distance, their presence intimidating but non-lethal so far. Eli realized the canyon was becoming a living classroom, teaching the humans the importance of terrain, positioning, and tactical movement. Suddenly, a smaller alien from the Queen's group darted forward, intercepting a creature that had attempted to flank the humans. Its movements were precise, almost artistic, yet deadly in efficiency. The humans watched, learning the value of timing, coordination, and anticipation. Eli felt a surge of respect for these beings, not fear, not hatred, but understanding. Humanity's survival depended on recognizing intelligence in all forms, not merely confronting it with violence. The Queen lowered her massive body near the humans, her eyes flickering with an intensity that felt like silent instruction. Eli understood that trust had limits, that observation could only go so far, and that human choice mattered more than ever. They could survive this night if they respected the lessons, if they acted with courage, and if they relied on reason rather than panic. As they moved through the narrow passage, the massive creatures made one final approach. Dust and debris flew, their massive limbs striking the ground with precision. The humans held their positions, shields raised, sensors active, hearts pounding. The Queen's group responded instantly, forming a living barrier between the humans and the threat. The massive creatures paused, seemingly realizing that brute force alone would not prevail here. Eli saw it then, a pattern emerging. The creatures assessed, adapted, and ultimately retreated, unable to provoke the Queen's group into aggression. Humanity had witnessed a display of intelligence, patience, and strategy beyond their comprehension. The lesson was clear. Power was meaningless without control, and survival required not just courage but understanding. By dawn, the canyon was silent. The Queen's group had established a perimeter, and the massive creatures had withdrawn beyond the horizon. Eli and his team exhaled collectively, relief washing over them. They were alive, having faced an overwhelming challenge, yet intact. The Queen's violet eyes softened slightly, a subtle acknowledgement of the humans' resilience and adaptability. Eli knelt, placing a hand on the cool surface of the canyon wall. Humanity had survived not because of weapons or technology, but because of intelligence, courage, and moral choice. He realized that the Queen's species valued these traits and that human potential had been recognized, even in the face of beings vastly superior in strength. Lieutenant Saria approached, her face pale but determined. "Captain, we made it. We're alive. But what now?" "There are more of them out there, and we don't know if the Queen's approval is enough." Eli nodded, feeling the weight of the responsibility. "We continue learning, we continue observing, we continue proving that humanity has value even in this alien world. The Queen has given us a chance, not a guarantee, but a chance. That's what humans excel at, taking chances, understanding consequences, and surviving against odds that seem impossible." The team rested briefly, using the quiet to recharge, analyze data, and prepare for the next challenge. The Queen remained nearby, her body partially coiled to protect, partially extended in vigilance. Her eyes flickered with intelligence, curiosity, and a subtle form of trust. Eli understood that this bond was fragile, earned through careful observation and disciplined action. As the suns began to rise again, casting light over the jagged canyon walls, the humans felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were no longer just explorers. They were students in a living lesson of intelligence, strategy, and survival. Humanity's value had been acknowledged, not through force, not through aggression, but through courage, reasoning, and moral choice. Eli looked toward the horizon, the massive forms of unknown creatures still lingering at a distance. They were formidable, but now humanity had insight, strategy, and guidance. They were small, yes, but adaptable, intelligent, and brave. And for the first time, Eli felt a profound truth. Humans had a place in this vast, alien universe. Not because of size, strength, or technology, but because of the courage to act wisely, to think critically, and to face the unknown with integrity. The Queen emitted a low hum, soft and almost approving. Eli understood that this was not just acknowledgement. It was an invitation to continue, to grow, and to face the universe as equals in moral capacity, if not in physical might. Humanity's journey on Kepler 437b was far from over. But for the first time, they had hope, understanding, and a lesson in survival that went beyond weapons and numbers. And in that lesson, Eli realized the truth of the universe. Intelligence, courage, and moral choice were the ultimate tools of survival. The humans had survived the night, but they had also earned the first thread of respect from a species that could have destroyed them without hesitation. The challenge ahead would be greater, the tests more difficult, but humanity had proven one thing beyond doubt. They were capable of rising to the occasion, even in a world that seemed designed to crush them. The morning sun of Kepler 437b barely pierced the canyon's jagged walls, painting the rocky surfaces in muted gold and violet. Captain Eli Morneau stood at the edge of the plateau, looking over the vast, alien landscape. The Queen remained behind, her immense form coiled protectively around the humans, her violet eyes tracking every movement. The previous night had tested them, pushing humanity to the limits of intelligence, patience, and courage. But the ultimate test was still ahead, the true measure of survival on this unforgiving world. From the far horizon, dark shapes emerged, far larger and faster than anything Eli had ever seen. These were not the Queen's group nor the massive creatures from the night before. Their movements were rapid, precise, and almost surgical. Each silhouette radiated power, each step sending vibrations through the ground. Eli's sensors barely kept up, struggling to capture the scale of these newcomers. Lieutenant Saria gripped his arm. "Captain, what are they? They're huge and intelligent." "I can feel it." Her voice trembled, but there was an undercurrent of determination. Eli nodded, his mind racing. They had survived challenges before, but these entities represented a threat unlike anything they had faced. "They're assessing us," Eli said, his voice steady. "They test the strong first, but we're not weak. Humans survive through reasoning, courage, and adaptability. That's our advantage. We use it now." The Queen's eyes shifted toward him, a soft hum vibrating through the canyon. She did not approach aggressively, yet her presence was undeniable. The humans could feel the intensity of her awareness, the calculated patience in her movements. She had guided them this far, showing that human choices mattered. Every decision had been observed, every instinct tested. And now, humanity would face the final test, survival against superior power while maintaining the trust they had earned. The massive newcomers advanced, and Eli noticed their formation. It was coordinated, almost militaristic. They did not rush blindly. They measured, analyzed, and reacted to every movement of the Queen and her group. The humans had seconds to decide, and hesitation could be fatal. Eli raised his hand slowly, signaling the team to remain calm and observe. "Move with purpose, think clearly, and act as one," he whispered. "Everything else comes second." The creatures reached the canyon edge, their massive bodies pressing against the rocks. They emitted a low, resonant vibration that made the ground quake. The Queen responded immediately, extending limbs and positioning her smaller allies between the humans and the newcomers. Her eyes flickered, intense yet controlled. She was preparing for engagement, but not for blind aggression. She was testing, teaching, demonstrating restraint. Eli realized that survival would depend not on force, but on coordination, observation, and understanding. Humanity had already proven resilience and intelligence, but the next challenge required precise execution. They could not falter. Each human movement, each choice, could tip the balance between survival and annihilation. As the massive newcomers advanced, one of them stepped forward, emanating a low, rhythmic vibration. It was not sound in the human sense, but a signal that resonated through the canyon walls and the humans' exosuits. Eli understood immediately. It was a test of comprehension, assessing the humans' response to a communication they did not yet understand fully. He signaled the team to respond, using subtle movements they had learned from observing the Queen. Their hands moved in slow, deliberate gestures, synchronized with one another. Their bodies remained calm, yet vigilant. The massive creature paused, analyzing. A second, then a third, and finally the formation advanced cautiously, no longer moving purely as a threat but as evaluators. Eli felt a surge of pride and awe. Humans were communicating without words, relying on reason and observation to bridge an almost impossible gap between species. It was HFY at its finest, human intelligence and adaptability shining against overwhelming odds. The Queen emitted a low, approving hum. She moved closer, her immense form coiling protectively around the humans. She extended a limb toward the newcomers, a gesture of authority and guidance. The massive creatures paused again, recognizing her dominance yet also noting the humans' composure. Eli realized that they were not just surviving, they were proving themselves worthy of respect in a universe that did not owe them mercy. The humans advanced cautiously, following the Queen's guidance. They moved toward the newcomers, maintaining slow, deliberate gestures. The creatures shifted, assessing, adapting, but they did not attack. It was a tense dance, a silent exchange of observation, intelligence, and trust. Then a misstep. One of the humans, a young engineer named Malik, tripped over a jagged rock, sending a sensor unit skittering across the canyon floor. The massive creatures reacted immediately, stepping forward in synchronized precision. Eli's heart raced. A wrong move now could provoke catastrophe. The Queen responded instantly. She extended a massive limb, shielding the humans while maintaining distance from the newcomers. Her eyes flickered with intensity, sending a message that resonated through the humans' minds. Remain calm, act with purpose. Eli signaled to Malik, steadying him. Slow, deliberate, we continue. Malik nodded, swallowing his fear, and regained his footing. The humans moved forward again, synchronized and purposeful. The newcomers hesitated, then mirrored their movements, adopting a cautious but controlled stance. The tension in the canyon was palpable, yet a fragile balance had been achieved. Hours passed as the humans continued this delicate exchange. The Queen's hum guided them, a constant rhythm that conveyed approval, instruction, and vigilance. The newcomers tested, but gradually their approach shifted from aggression to observation. They had recognized human intelligence, adaptability, and courage, the same traits the Queen valued. Eli observed the Queen closely. Her posture was no longer defensive but strategic. She was teaching them the ultimate lesson, that strength without control is meaningless, and that intelligence, moral choice, and courage define survival. Humanity's greatest weapons were not shields or weapons, they were their minds and their will. As the suns climbed higher, the massive newcomers finally halted. Their formation relaxed slightly, acknowledging the humans' composure and the Queen's authority. Eli exhaled, a wave of relief mingled with awe washing over him. Humanity had faced beings far stronger and more dangerous, yet they had survived, not by brute force, but by understanding, reason, and courage. The Queen extended a limb toward Eli, a gesture that felt almost like acknowledgement. Her violet eyes softened, and she emitted a low hum that resonated through the canyon like a melody. Eli felt it deep in his chest, a profound recognition of humanity's potential. They had earned respect, not through weapons or numbers, but through intelligence, moral choice, and unwavering courage. Eli knelt, setting the canteen on the ground once more. It was a symbol, a bridge, and a reminder of the first moment they had met, the sip of water that had sparked fury, fear, and ultimately understanding. The Queen approached, her massive limbs hovering near but not threatening. She sniffed the air, a subtle motion, and then lowered her head slightly. It was trust, a fragile, precious trust that had been earned through human resilience and integrity. The smaller aliens moved closer to the humans, their luminescent appendages brushing lightly against the canyon walls and instruments. They observed with fascination, mirroring gestures, and even experimenting with imitation. Humanity had become a part of this alien social structure, not as equals yet, but as participants recognized for their courage and intelligence. Eli felt the weight of the moment. They had survived the night, navigated alien communication, and faced overwhelming power without faltering. Humanity had proven that their greatest strength was not size, technology, or weapons. It was their mind, their moral choice, and their unyielding courage in the face of impossible odds. Suddenly, the Queen's eyes flickered toward the horizon. A low hum vibrated through the canyon again, sharper and more insistent. From the distant rocks, a massive energy pulse radiated, causing the air to shimmer. The newcomers moved slightly, alert, but they did not attack. Eli realized this was the final test, an environmental hazard, a demonstration of the alien world's dangers, and an opportunity to show adaptability under stress. The ground shook, rocks shifting and debris falling around them. Eli's team moved instinctively, coordinating with the Queen's guidance. They adapted, observing, predicting, and responding with intelligence and calm. The massive newcomers watched, analyzing, but no aggression followed. Eli understood then that humanity had completed the test. They had survived danger, navigated alien social structures, and demonstrated intelligence, moral choice, and courage, the very traits the Queen valued above strength. They had proven that humans belonged in the universe, not through dominance, but through capability, adaptability, and integrity. As the environmental pulse subsided, the Queen lowered her massive form, signaling the end of the trial. The smaller aliens mirrored her motion, and the massive newcomers retreated beyond the horizon, leaving a silent acknowledgement. Humanity had survived, thrived, and earned recognition. Eli exhaled, feeling the exhaustion, relief, and pride washing over him. They had faced unimaginable odds, learned alien behavior, and proven the value of human traits in a universe filled with beings far beyond their strength. They had not only survived, they had earned trust. Lieutenant Saria approached, her face radiant despite the fatigue. "Captain, we did it, we survived, and I think they respect us." Eli nodded, looking toward the Queen. Her eyes met his, a silent communication passing between them. It was recognition, respect, and perhaps the beginning of something greater. Humanity had faced an alien world, overwhelming power, and life-or-death decisions, and they had emerged not just alive, but acknowledged. The suns rose fully over Kepler 437b, casting light across the jagged canyon, illuminating the humans, the Queen, and her kind. Humanity had survived the ultimate test, not through aggression, not through strength, but through intelligence, courage, and moral choice. Eli realized that this was the essence of survival in the cosmos, to face the unknown with reasoning, bravery, and heart. And in that moment, standing on an alien world under the gaze of a being capable of annihilation, Eli Morneau understood a profound truth. Humanity's greatest strength was not their weapons, their technology, or their numbers. It was their mind, their courage, and their moral will, the qualities that allowed them to survive, adapt, and thrive in a universe that demanded both intelligence and heart. The Queen emitted a soft, final hum, a gesture of acknowledgement and trust. Eli smiled faintly, feeling the weight of history pressing on him. They had survived the impossible. Humanity had proven that even in the face of superior power, intelligence, and moral courage could bridge the gulf between species. The journey on Kepler 437b was far from over, but one truth was certain. Humans belonged in the stars. They had faced the ultimate test, survived, and emerged stronger, wiser, and recognized. And as Eli looked over the canyon, toward horizons filled with unknown wonders and dangers, he knew humanity was ready for whatever came next.